Greetings, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Before I start today's topic, I need to go ahead and give a bit of a warning. For those individuals who have delicate sensibilities, who are maybe too young, some of the subject matter in this video is going to be, well, to some people, a little offensive. If you have problems hearing about subjects relating to sexuality, relating to physical intimacy, relating to some of the topics of today that are of a controversial nature, then this is the point where I suggest you stop listening to this video and you go find something else. Just giving you a warning. So, in my last video, I talked about the two atoms. And I just grazed the idea of the genetic manipulation that was done to Adamu and Tiamat. And then, of course, this was also have been done to the other 14, because there was a total of 16 that were created. And I said that I would go ahead and get more in depth of what was actually done. So, with that, okay, so I went into the idea that Nagashita, under Enki's order, had put Enki and Enma to sleep, and Adamu and Tiamat to sleep, and he had extracted genetic material from Enki and Enma, and extracted genetic material from Adamu and Tiamat, and he had done the genetic manipulation. And this was all so that we could procreate, so that mankind could procreate. But what I'm going to suggest is that there was something more that was done than just making it to where we could procreate. Okay. Now, if this is in the story, and a lot of people would be like, okay, so this is a story. What actual evidence, what proof do we have of this? And for that, I'm going to come here to this video. This individual is Lloyd Pye. Now, he's no longer with us. But Lloyd Pye was an anthropologist. And he was working on the subject of the missing link. The link between modern Homo sapien and the earlier hominids. And he got to a certain point, and he hit a wall, which a lot have done. This is the whole idea of the missing link. And he started reading Zecharia Sitchin's books, and this opened the door for him. It allowed him to see that the Anunnaki theory, the idea that we were genetically manipulated a long time ago, made sense. So in this video, he goes ahead and he shows that there is a splice in our genome, in the genes. There is something that actually looks like a splice. And it's been compared to when, the minor little bit of genetic splicing that we do, this splice in the genome was compared to what we would do when we splice genes, and it looks pretty much the same. So it is believed that it is this splice, this what appears to be a splice, is what the Anunnaki did to us. Again, I'm not going to play this video. You can watch it because the link will be in the description. So when Ningishita went ahead and did the genetic manipulation, he not only made it to where we could procreate, but I'm going to suggest that he did two other things. Because we kind of lost the instinct to procreate when the hybridization took place. Now, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, because in my last video, I talked about two different instances of hybridization. Okay, so the first instance, of course, was taking Homo erectus and mixing with Anunnaki. Okay, so this form of hybrid is when you have two separate species and you're bringing them together. Now they're close enough, because if we remember in our well, for some of us it was middle school, but even high school biology, you got the family, phylum, genus, species, that hierarchy. Okay, the species was different, but the genus was close enough to where you could come together and you could get offspring. It's just that they would be sterile because they are a hybrid. Okay, so that's two separate species coming together. Now, the second instance when I talked about hybrid is I said Zasudra was a hybrid. Now, because he was already human, and humans are very close to Anunnaki, they are of the same species. The difference is, though, is the Anunnaki DNA, if we're going with the full amount, not just snippets of, is more evolved. We could say that we're Homo sapien, but the Anunnaki would be Homo superior. So because he was the son of Enki, he got some of that superior genetic material in his makeup. So this is the reason why, when in the Bible, when it talks about Noah was 600 years old when he built the ark, that's the reason why, is because he had this superior Anunnaki genetic material. Same species, just more evolved genetically. So that's what I meant by the two different instances of hybridization. Okay, so coming back to this, Ningishita made it to where we could procreate. But I think that Enki told him to do two other things. And the first thing that he did was he gave us a reward system. And for that, we will come over here. In our brains, when we have sex, and of course during the climax, the orgasm, and then also anytime that we have accomplishment, sense of self-fulfillment, anything like that, we get a dopamine squirt. You get just a little squirt of dopamine. And that's the pleasure drug, the pleasure chemical, although it might as well be a drug. And I'll get into that here in a minute. So, in order to reward man for doing what's necessary to procreate, we get the dopamine squirt. Alright, so I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here because dopamine is important in other things. Yes, you get it anytime you have any form of an accomplishment. Anything that fulfills you, you get dopamine. And unfortunately, gaming companies and individuals that, companies that create apps that give you achievements, they know this. They know the neuroscience. If you've ever noticed, when you play a game, one of the online games that you play on your phone or you play on your computer, at the very beginning, you get achievement. You progress quickly at the beginning of the game. And the reason why is because you are getting this constant hit of dopamine. Now, once you progress further into the game, it's achievement. Until you hit the paywall. Now, you're already addicted to that dopamine rush. And just like with any drug, eventually you hit addiction syndrome. To where it keeps taking a higher dose, until finally it gets to the point to where in order to feel normal, you have to take an incredibly high dose of the drug. It's the same way with dopamine. And because you want to get that next hit of dopamine, you want to get that next achievement, you have to pay for it. Okay. So, the climax, the orgasm, gives you dopamine. The other chemical that the brain secretes that's part of this other genetic manipulation. Now, don't get me wrong. These things could have evolved. These things could be completely natural. It's just that it kind of makes sense that they would have done this in order to get us to procreate, because they needed workers, they needed many, and they needed them yesterday. Okay, so they had to have something to kind of, prod us into making more people. Be fruitful and multiply. That's that whole commandment. Be fruitful and multiply. Why? Because we need more workers. Okay, so the next chemical is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is the pair bonding chemical. This is so that if you've got a mother and a father who is going to generate strong, healthy, virile offspring, then you constantly want that pair bond to create those offspring, because they're going to all be strong, healthy, and virile. So you don't want them to leave each other. This is the reason why we pair bond. I'm going to go off on another tangent. And this is something that I see in today's society. We have what is called the hookup culture. This is where people don't... the ultimate goal, yes, might be that they're looking for a mate. They're looking for a spouse, a partner, whatever you want to call it. But in doing so, or if they're just wanting to have fun, they wind up having multiple partners. And in some cases, we're looking at double and triple digits. And of course, those digits are what has been affectionately called the body count. Now, this could be male or female, it doesn't matter. But when somebody asks the question, what's your body count? Some people get offended by this. They think, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter what my body count is. Why are you concerning this? Are you insecure? Are you afraid that they're going to be better than you? Are you going to be afraid that they're bigger than you? You're not going to be able to match up to them. It has nothing to do with security. It has everything to do with, hey, I might not be in this culture to just, get my rocks off and have a little bit of a thrill. I'm actually looking for someone that I want to mate with. I want to be part of the pair bond. But because oxytocin, just like with dopamine, is essentially a drug. You can overdose. You can get it to the point to where you've had so many individual partners that it no longer does what it's supposed to do because you've pair bonded with so many others. Think about this. Now, this is for the my listeners who are consenting adults, and when it comes to sexual activity. Okay, think about when you first lost your virginity. Now, how do we define virginity? Or losing your virginity. Okay, the way I see it, you lose your virginity. It's not a physical thing. It has to do with this oxytocin. The first time that you were with a person, and as long as it was a positive experience, because sometimes it's negative, but if it was a positive experience, the first time that you were with a person and you have that release of oxytocin with them, that's when you lost your virginity. And think about how you felt about that person. Again, if it was positive. You felt clingy. You wanted to spend every waking moment with this person. You felt like you were in love with this person. This was who you were going to marry. You spend the rest of your life with, have kids, grow old, and die with this person. Okay? That's what you should feel. Because that's what oxytocin does. It makes you pair bond with that individual. But if you have a high body count, then you are pair bonding with this one and 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 this one. Who are you choosing? Who's the one that you are going to have that same feeling with? You're not. So the body count does matter, but it doesn't have anything to do with a security issue. Now, how high should someone's body count be? What is acceptable? Well, the way I look at it is you don't want somebody who's zero. Okay? I mean, yes, there are some people that they find a thrill of taking someone's virginity. But you don't... sorry about that. That was my computer going into screensaver. When it comes, you don't want someone who is completely and totally inexperienced. Okay, unless of course you are one of the ones that like to teach. So the way I see it is, yes, you want to experiment. You want to have a few partners. That way you learn what it is that you like. What does it for you? What turns you on? What gets your motor running? What gets you off? Okay? So the way I see it is single digit. As long as you are still in the single digits, you should be okay. You start getting into the double digits, now you are probably too high in the body count. The oxytocin has been spread around to so many, and then let's not even go into the triple digits, and then there are some that is even further than that. But anyway. Okay, so, yeah, enough of that. All right, so those are the two chemicals that, again, this could have been an evolutionary thing, could have been something that was done by nature. But to me, I see it as something that was given to us. Now, the other thing, the other thing that Nagashita could have potentially done is because we lost the ability to generate pheromones and to sense pheromones. Now there are some studies that shows that we might still give off a little bit of pheromone, but even if we do, we don't have the sense organs anymore to detect them. Animals do. That's how they know to mate. There's two ways that animals know to mate. Either it's a seasonal thing, certain times of the year, that's when they mate. Or when the female goes into heat, she gives off a pheromone. The males in the area, they sense that pheromone and they know that she is in heat, and then they go and take care of business. But we lost that. So the other thing that Nagashita would have given us is the sex drive, that sexual urge. Okay, and the goal of the sex drive is the orgasm, the climax. I mean, we're constantly striving for that. Now, I know there are some women that, and this is actually pretty much a female thing. They will engage in physical intimacy and not get off. For the longest time, the female orgasm was actually considered a myth. But again, like I said, it is the sex drive that makes us try to achieve that climax. And male and female, of course, males it's relatively easy, but for females sometimes it just wouldn't happen. And in fact, way back when, and this has actually even been seen in texts and things like this of the ancient times, you would have a condition that was known as female hysteria. And, they didn't really understand why it was and everything like that, but they found out that the treatment for female hysteria is a woman would usually go to a quote-unquote doctor. Now, most of the time, this was not a medical doctor. And she would go in and lie down, and this doctor would manually manipulate her womb. Now, I'm just going to leave it at that. Let you think about that. Okay? But there would be the climax. she would have the orgasm, and her hysteria, which, I mean, hysteria would, basically make a woman go crazy. But can also happen with guys, too. A man who is abstinent and celibate. Abstinence is not having sexual activities, and celibate is not even taking matters into his own hands. Two things would happen. One of two things, or both at the same time. The man would go, a little crazy. And then, of course, you had what are called nocturnal emissions. The body is going to release regardless. So, let's go in a little bit more with the sex drive, and for that I'm going to come over here. This is King James Version of the Bible, and this is supposed to be Adam and Eve, and this is right after they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And it says that Eve realized she was naked. And this is what a lot of the Abrahamic religions like to push, is it was shame that she felt. Because she realized she was naked. I'm, shame. The one thing that we have to do is we have to come over here and we have to look at the difference between embarrassed and shamed. Okay, so it says both of these words refer to one's inner feelings. However, ashamed is a person who feels guilty after having done something immoral and feels sorry. So the only reason why there would be shame is because, if there was shame, is because she went against God's commandment. She ate from the tree. But it wasn't, the whole nakedness thing, that wasn't shame. That was being embarrassed. Because it says, embarrassed, on the other hand, is someone who is fearful of other people's judgments. They might not have done anything wrong, necessarily. So what it was is, now that she had sex drive, now she had this sexual urge, it was no longer an instinctual thing. And she seen Adam's nakedness, and she wound up getting THO. She became aroused. Same thing with Adam. He seen Eve's nakedness, and he got an erection. He got aroused. And this was embarrassment. Here's an example. Us males, when we go through puberty, when we are teens, our bodies, they just really don't know what the heck they want to do. So for no reason whatsoever, we'll wind up getting an erection. Okay, so this is it's not a meme, but it's a common scenario that a lot of people like to put out. You got the teenage boy who is sitting in class, sitting at his desk, and his body decides, hey, and wakes up and he gets an erection. And the teacher's like, hey, you need to come up here and do this problem on the board. And the boy's sitting there scrunching down into his desk and trying to cover his erection. He's like, no, thank you. I'll take the F. That's embarrassment. That's not shame. That's embarrassment. So that's what it was. Because they now had the sex drive. They now were being turned on by each other's nakedness. It wasn't shame, it was embarrassment. Okay, so we have the sex drive. Now, in certain religions, specific and especially the Abrahamic religions, there are three things, and it's not just religion either, it's some of it is society as well. There are three things that are classified as sins. Now, the first one is homosexuality. Now, not so much anymore, because the world has actually started to accept homosexuals. It's, there's nothing wrong with it. It's natural. But for the longest time, the religions, they would use this. I mean, this is Leviticus 18 and 20, and it says, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. For the longest time, and this is in the West, if it was found out that you were a homosexual, you would be executed. Now, in some countries, it's still that way. If you found out that you are a homosexual, you will be put to death. But for most of the world, well, I don't want to say most, but a lot of the Western world, homosexuality has been accepted. This, unfortunately, has created an avalanche. You've heard the expression, give an inch, take a mile, okay? So when we accepted homosexuals, we kind of had others come out of the woodwork. And they were like, well, if you're going to accept homosexuality, now you need to accept us. And this is when we get into the idea of gender dysphoria. Nature is not perfect. Okay? There is strong possibility that nature makes mistakes. And growing up, when I was a little boy, I used to spend a lot of time with my uncle. I'd go over to my grandparents and we'd spend time with my uncle. He was only 4 years older than me. And he had a friend, a little boy, that you really couldn't tell that it was a little boy. Now, we were kids, so, it's not like our vocal cords had expanded and our voices had dropped or anything like that. So we still had the high-pitched voice, but this boy, I mean, if you didn't look at him, if you just heard his voice, you'd swear up and down you were hearing a little girl. Also, his behavior was very feminine. His body, yes, we were little boys, so we were essentially straight lines. There was nothing to differentiate, but he was very lithe. He was very feminine looking. This would have been one of those cases where I would say, yes, nature made a mistake. Because the only thing that would say that you were a boy was a primary sexual characteristic, which people don't see. But everything else, yeah, this was a girl. You really couldn't tell the difference. So that would be one of those situations of an actual case of gender dysphoria. Now, some of these others, well, the way I see it is you have the ones that are actual, and then you have everybody else that are seeing the attention that these individuals are getting. And they start questioning their gender. Not so much because they are truly confused, but because they like the attention that this other individual is being given. And they want to follow suit. It's almost like mob mentality. So, well, I'm going to climb off my soapbox on that one. There's a lot of that out there, and like I said, it's a controversy. There's a lot of political stuff that's going on. There's a lot of social stuff that's going on. Eventually, something is going to have to be done. Something is going to have to be resolved. But again, like I said, I'm done with that. I'm climbing down off my soapbox for that. Okay, so the next thing that would be classified as a sin, and not so much, well, I mean, it would be religiously wise, but most definitely society and even legal. I'm not going to go too much into it, but there are certain acts that some individuals do that are classified as immoral, taboo, or even illegal. But the body doesn't care. You know, fulfilling the sex drive, that's all the body cares about. How it's done, this is where you get into sexual preference. And some of these sexual preferences, anyway, I'm done with that. Moving on to the last one. And this is one that you wouldn't think would actually be a sin, wouldn't be wrong. But I am going to get into the reason why these things are classified as sins. But the last thing is taking matters into your own hand. Yes, I'm talking about masturbation. And in a lot of religions, it is a sin to masturbate. All you're doing is just trying to take care of that sexual urge, that sex drive. Now, here is why they are sins. Remember, the whole idea of procreation was given by the commandment of be fruitful and multiply. So anytime you would waste genetic material, you would engage in some sort of sexual activity that was not going to generate a worker. That's the reason why it's a sin. Has nothing to do that it's dirty or that it's, wrong or whatever. It's because you're not creating life. Now, that commandment, be fruitful and multiply, is irrelevant for today. We are sitting at almost 8 billion people on the planet. We don't need to be fruitful and multiply anymore. I'm sorry, I climbed back up on my soapbox. I'm going to be done with that, okay? So that was, that's all the procreation thing, the genetic manipulation that was done. So now I'm going to go into a little bit of a lighter side. I'm going to go into some of the Anunnaki love stories. Okay, so the first one now, with this one, I got the wrong one. There it is. I thought I had everything in the proper order. Oh man. I guess not. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, yeah. I had the right one in the first place. I know. Okay. With this story, every interpretation, every translation that I've seen, save one, has always said the same thing. Okay, this is Enlil and Sud. Now, I have looked how to actually pronounce her name, and everywhere I looked, I can't find it. So I'm just going to pronounce it the way I think it should be. Okay, so anyway, in this it talks about you've got a little Anunnaki female. I mean, this is a girl. And you have Enlil. You wouldn't think that Enlil would do something like this. Here is the Lord of Command. This is the Lord of Air. He's the commander of the Earth mission. But you have Enlil, and this is before he has found a wife. And you have Sud. And Sud's mother has told her, don't go play down by the river, because Enlil is lurking there. And if you go down there, he's going to do something to you that you're not going to like. Well, the little girl doesn't listen. She goes down by the river, and Enlil proceeds to take her against her will. Now, when I say this is a little girl, it's believed that she'd probably be about 12. And this is Enlil. This is Yahweh. Well, because this is considered taboo, this was considered against Anunnaki decree, these 7 who judge, the Council of the Anunnaki, they come together and they banish Enlil. Enlil, the Lord of the Command. Sud goes ahead and petitions the council. Yes, he, took me against my will, but I love him. She did fall in love with him. And she was willing to marry him. And of course, the council went to Enlil and said, hey, she wants to marry you. Are you willing to marry her? And he's like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do in the first place. So he's brought out of his banishment. He goes ahead and marries Sud. She becomes Enlil. Okay. Like I said, this is the story that I've seen in a lot of different, the interpretation in a lot. But if you go into the actual, and this is the actual story, directly translated from the cuneiform clay tablet, Enlil and Sud, this has nothing to do with that. There's no impropriety whatsoever in here. What it does sound like is it sounds like a man courting a woman. I mean, yes, he comes and says, come, I want to speak to you. I will have talk with you and about you becoming my wife. Kiss me, my lady, of most beautiful eyes. The matter rests in your hands. That's it. And then it says, but the words had barely left his mouth when right in front of him she went into the house. She spurned his advances. And of course, he goes and he talks with his advisor, and his advisor's like, well, you need to appeal to her mother. You need to let her mother know that you are actually serious. And you need to send gifts and things like that. And he does. He sends all kinds of gifts. I mean, there's a whole freaking list of things that he sends. And this girl's mother, Sud's mother, sits there and says, okay, yeah, he is serious. Then you need to go out there and you need to accept his courtship and you need to go ahead and marry him. There's no impropriety. There is none whatsoever in the actual story. So I don't know where the individuals that wrote the various interpretations of it get it. It makes no sense. But this is actually a fairly good story. I mean, it is a true courtship, a true love story. Okay. Now we get into some good stuff. Let's make sure I get the right one here. Okay, no, it's this one. Okay. Nope. Again. Okay, I think it was this one up here. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is when Marduk took his wife. Now, this is interesting. Marduk is the eldest son of 5. And what we see something that was a kind of a, I guess, a tradition with some families here on Earth. You've got several sisters, and these sisters can't take a wife until the eldest sister, or not wife, husband. Yeah, hey, talk about homosexuality. Okay, the younger sisters can't take a husband until the eldest sister does. And if the eldest sister never takes a husband, then the younger sisters can't take husbands. So that's what we have here. Marduk hasn't taken a wife, so none of his brothers can do that. Even though I think it says that Nergal went ahead and did it anyway, against tradition. So it was basically once Marduk. Where's it at? Here we go again. Okay, yeah. Okay, it says, it says, to wait my espousal, being your firstborn Nergal did not wait. The other 4 indifferents, my espousal are awaiting. Okay, so a bride I wish to choose. To have a spouse, it is my desire. So did Marduk to his father Enki say. Your words happy make me, Enki to Marduk was saying. Your mother too shall rejoice. It says, is she one of the young ones who heal and succor give? In other words, basically Ninma. Ninma was the chief medical officer. And so she had a whole cadre of nurses. And so this is what Enki's sitting there saying. Is like, is it one of the nurses? Is it one of the Anunnaki nurses? And Marduk comes down here and says, a descendant of Adapa she is. Of Earth, not Nibiru is she. Okay, so long story short. This was Marduk's sin. Now, I still need to go into the incarnations of Marduk, but Marduk is Satan, okay? This is his sin. This is the whole reason why he fell, is because he wanted to take a human wife. Now, why is it a problem to take a wife? Why is it a problem to take a human spouse whatsoever? Well, we have a fairly recent example of why this is. Okay, so we come down here, it says, it was one thing for the father with earthlings intercourse to have. And this is the thing, Enki he was a lech, he went around and he had sexual relations with many, many females, human females. But he never married them. The reason why? It is another matter for the son and earthling to espouse, lordship on her to bestow. Marduk's a prince. If he marries a human, okay, remember I said we had a fairly recent example. Prince William of the royal family. You know, he wasn't a crown prince, but he was a prince. Married Kate. Kate was not royalty. She was not nobility. She came from an aristocratic family, and that was it. She married a royal. She married a prince. Now, she would never be a princess, because you have to be royal for that. But because Prince William was also a duke, she could, because that's nobility, she could be a duchess. She was given rights and privileges and duties and responsibilities of a duchess. It's the same way with Sharpanet. Because he wanted to marry her, he wanted to make her his wife, she would have rights in heaven. Humans are not meant to have rights in heaven. So how was this rectified? Well, this was rectified. Marduk lost rights of official Anunnaki kingship in heaven for taking a human wife. He had to relinquish his birthright, and then also to never again step foot on Nibiru. This was his fall because he took a human wife. Now, at around the same time, that Marduk married Sharpanet, the Igigi, those under Marduk's command, they came from Lamu, which is Mars, and they seen that Marduk was being allowed to take a human wife. Now in the Bible, you know, it says that when the sons of God seen that the daughters of men were fair, and they went into them and they took them as wives. This is what we're talking about here. The sons of God, the Igigi, these are also known as the Watchers, or the Fallen Ones. Okay, so when they seen that Marduk was allowed to take a wife, they were like, okay, fine, we want wives too. We want human wives. And so they went in and they took the ones that they wanted, and they went to the landing place. They went to Baalbek. And they demanded that the Anunnaki Council recognize their marriages, and if the Anunnaki Council didn't, they were going to destroy, it said the planet. They were going to destroy Earth, since they had control of the spacecraft, and these spacecraft had pretty massive weapons on them. They could have launched the spacecraft and destroyed the Earth. So the Anunnaki had to give in, allow them to take the wives, but they put the same penalty on the Igigi that they did for Marduk. These were the fallen ones. Now, it says the sons of God. I don't think all of the Igigi were male. I think you had a diverse set of astronauts here. You had both males and females. And we see this if we read the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh's mother was a goddess. His father was human. Now here's something that's interesting. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, it says that Gilgamesh was 2/3 God. How is that possible? Well, if we look at it this way, let's look at Heracles, or Hercules. Hercules' father was a god. His mother was human, and he was only half god. He was a demigod. But Gilgamesh's mother was the goddess, and his father was the human. The reason why he was more god because his mother was a goddess was because of the DNA that is given. You have the mother gives DNA, you have the father gives DNA to the offspring. But the mother gives a specific type of DNA. She gives the mitochondrial DNA. So he has half from his father, half from his mother, and then the mitochondrial DNA from his mother. Thus, 2/3 God. Now, this is one of the things that I think that we do incorrectly. When it comes to a family line is passed down through the father. That's not the way it should be. It should pass down through the mother because she is the only one that gives us our mitochondrial DNA. So it should technically pass down through the mother. Okay, so when it comes to the Agigi, when it comes to the fallen ones, you get into the idea of the Nephilim. It is still hotly debated as to what exactly the Nephilim are. But it has been suggested that if you take the root of Nephilim, and the root would be Nephal. Nephal means to fall. So these would be talking about the fallen ones. Now, of course, it says, in the days of Noah, there were giants on the earth. Well, the giants were the Anunnaki. I mean, they come from a larger planet. They are bigger than us. Okay, so these were the giants. But the Nephilim were those giants, those Anunnaki, the Agigi, that fell. Not literally fall, but they fell in the eyes of the other Anunnaki. They were kind of degraded because of what they did. They took human wives. Now, a lot of people say that the union of the fallen ones and human, spouse, I don't want to say wife, but they say that the offspring were the giants, and that's not what it actually says. It says that the offspring of this union was, these became men of great renown. Well, what does that mean? Renown, importance, clout, influence. These became kings. These became rulers. These became sages. And we see that in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He was a king, a child of the Nephilim. Okay. Now this next one, I need to give another little bit of a disclaimer. Because if you watch this, this is ancient erotica. Okay? Granted, if you don't understand the innuendo, if you don't understand the euphemisms that are being used, then you won't be able to tell that it's erotica. believe me, I know the different, because I study all this and whatnot. And when I listen to this, I laughed my ass off. It was funny. But this is an actual love story, and this is actually it kind of makes me wonder: did William Shakespeare get a hold of some of these ancient stories? Because this sounds almost exactly like Romeo and Juliet. It is a tragedy. You don't have both of the individuals dying, but you do have one, and it is a tragedy. So, what this is Inanna is of the Enlilite clan, and Dumuzi is of the Inkiite. Okay, here is the Capulets and the Montagues. And they fall in love, and they become affianced. And the Enlilites are holding back judgment on Dumuzi, which this is the youngest son of Enki, because they're trying to appease Inanna. Now, there's one thing about Inanna that I need to point out. She's not considered Aphrodite in the Greek mythology for nothing. Inanna was Anu's special granddaughter. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But they were trying to appease Inanna, so they allowed this courtship to take place. But this was going to mess up Marduk's plans. Now, Dumuzi is Marduk's youngest brother. And Marduk did not want to see this union because, like I said, it would mess up his plans. So he engineered it to where Dumuzi would be put into a situation of infidelity. And then it was found out by Inanna's family, and they wound up killing Dumuzi. Now, when this happened, remember I said that, these are the same beings, but they're called different in different cultures. In the Hindu culture, she is Kali. The destroyer. And it's because of her anger towards Marduk for what he did to the man that she loved. Now, of course, Kali has an alternate personality. When she's not angry, when she hasn't started remembering what was done to her, the betrayal, then she's Pravarti. In Egyptian mythology, when she is dwelling on what was done to her, her betrayal, she is Sekhmet. But her alternate personality is Bastet. Now, Egyptologists like to say that these are actually sisters, but I don't think so. I think it's the same being, she just has the alternate personality. Okay. Those are the main love stories. But I'm going to go into one final love story. And this one isn't romantic love. This isn't sexual love. This is pure love. In previous videos, I've talked about how Thoth is the most important being to mankind. And I've also shown that Thoth is Yeshua. He is Jesus. Now, when he was Nagashita, and he was ordered by Anu to teach mankind, to learn, for them to be able to survive, for them to be able to thrive, because the Anunnaki were going to leave, and mankind had to be able to do without. So Nagashita was ordered to teach, and while he was teaching, he's seen the potential of mankind. He's seen the compassion, and he started to fall in love. In the Bible, it talks about the groom and the bride. Well, Thoth is the groom. And of course, the religions like to say, well, it's the church is the bride. But it's not. It's actually all of humanity. He loves us all. Now, I'm not pushing for, believing in Jesus as the Messiah or the Savior and that you should love him. I'm not doing that. But I am showing you that here is a pure love. It is a type of love to where he would do anything for us, and he did. Not only in every one of his incarnations was he trying to teach us the ultimate love, teaching you to ascend to where you no longer have to take on the flesh, thus having to suffer and all that happy, but also that he would die for us. That's pure love. But there's the birds and the bees and the Anunnaki. All the source material will be there in the description, minus those things that I pulled from the Lost Book of Enki. And again, if you haven't read them, find them, read them. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Enjoy.